Good evening, you're watching Estuary News. I'm Hugh Riches. In the headlines tonight, a woman has died following a traffic collision in East Yorkshire, the launch of the Poppy Appeal in Grimsby, and a world-class cultural venue opens in Hull. And I'll be talking to Mark Newton ahead of this year's Taste of Excellence Awards. A major incident has been declared at the Northern Lincolnshire and Goole NHS Foundation Trust. They've shut down their computer systems after a virus infected the network yesterday. All planned operations, outpatient appointments and diagnostic procedures have been cancelled for today and tomorrow. Dr. Karen Dunderdale, Deputy Chief Executive, said the Trust has taken the decision to shut down the majority of its systems so they can isolate and destroy the virus. An East Yorkshire woman has died following a traffic accident. The 88-year-old woman from Skidby was a backseat passenger in a red Hyundai i20 which collided with a tractor and trailer on the 23rd of October on the westbound carriageway of the A63 between South Cave and North Cave. She was taken to Hull Royal Infirmary where she died on Saturday. The driver of the Hyundai was uninjured, while the car's front seat passenger and the driver of the tractor suffered minor injuries. Officers are still seeking witnesses and information about the collision. If you can help, please call Humberside Police on 101. And police are appealing for witnesses after a 31-year-old man sustained a serious head injury during an assault in Cleethorpes. The incident happened close to the Barcelona Club on Station Approach in the early hours of yesterday morning. The man was assaulted at around 3 a.m. and was taken to Hull Royal Infirmary where he's in a serious condition. 5 child sex abuse victims have today launched a High Court bid for compensation over abuse at a Catholic school in Market Weighton. The payout could total millions of pounds if the bid is successful. More than 200 men say they were abused at St William's Residential School in East Yorkshire between 1970 and 1991. The school provided residential care and education for boys aged 10 to 16 with emotional and behavioural problems. The school closed in 1992. Anthony McCallan, the former chaplain, was jailed for 15 years, and James Carricker, the ex-principal, for 9 years back in December. Today saw the launch of the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal in Grimsby. Senior figures, including the Mayor of North East Lincolnshire and the Deputy Lord Lieutenant, joined the crowds in Freshney Place to remember the fallen. £42,000 were raised by the Royal British Legion's Grimsby branch last year. They hope to exceed that figure this year, raising money for ex-servicemen and servicewomen.
It's very important that we support the British Legion in selling these poppies for a very good cause, and it's a great pleasure and privilege to be asked to come on the opening of it.
We've had so many celebrations this year with 100 years of the Battle of the Somme, the First World War, Second World War, the Battle of Jutland. You know, we could go on, yes. And it's an extensive list that it's now bringing it to the forefront to the attention of our schools, our school children, the next generations, and it's merging together the old and the young, and it's keeping our traditions, our culture, our history, our importance and why we are today. And we've got a lot of people to thank, not only for those that we've lost, but for the ones who are here today with the Poppy Appeal.
The very freedom that we enjoy today is because of the people that died for us way back, First World War, Second World War, and the ongoing struggle that we face today. So it's really key that we remember the people who are putting their lives on the line for us every day so that we can enjoy the freedom that we have.
Images of the £20 million redevelopment of Hull's Prince's Quay have been revealed today. It'll be the UK's first shopping centre to feature high street and outlet stores under one roof, the biggest change in the quay's history in 25 years. The multi-million-pound revamp will see 24 new outlet brands on the upper deck, with Next Outlet set to open a flagship store. Other brands such as Ben Sherman, Bench and Soul Trader are coming to Hull for the first time. In addition to the outlet deck, a new waterfront dining hub on the ground floor harbour deck will be developed. The work's expected to be complete by next April. On tonight's Hot Topic, I'll be speaking to the former Secretary of State for Education, Nicky Morgan. Here's a preview of what she said.
We have great schools and great teachers in this country, but we don't yet have them everywhere. And so the white paper that I published back in March of 2016 was trying to set out the idea that we need to tackle those areas of entrenched educational underperformance. And I know from my time as Education Secretary that there's only so much bandwidth in a government department to deliver reform. And actually that's the big challenge in terms of bringing all schools up to the right standards, rather than having something else introduced into the system, which means that actually the education sector focuses on selective education or non-selective, rather than that laser-like focus on making sure that all children have access to an excellent academic education.
And you can catch that episode here on Estuary TV tonight at 8 p.m. Middleton Hall at Hull University has reopened after a £9.5 million, another revamp, ahead of Hull 2017. The venue will be one of the city's key venues for next year's events. It now features a 400-seat concert hall with state-of-the-art acoustics and facilities to host theatre productions. The hall, which dates back to the 1960s, has been transformed into what its owners call a world-class cultural venue, according to university bosses. Now it's time for Reflections, which this week comes courtesy of the Reverend Ben Norton in Hull.
So a friend of mine posted on Facebook the other day 5 things that had happened in his day that were both good and bad, high times and low times. And often that's just what life is like. As we go through life, there are brilliant things to celebrate, and there are also things to mourn and things that we lose. As we come to this time of year, at the end of October, we celebrate All Souls and All Saints, both things that are great and also can be really difficult. Maybe as you reflect on this past year, you yourself will have lost people that you love. And at this time of year, we take the time particularly to remember, to think and to give thanks for them. As we approach this time of year, I encourage you to stop, to reflect. Maybe find a local church where you can go and light a candle. In the midst of life, we are surrounded by death. There are high times and there are low times. But the one thing that never changes is God's true and everlasting faithfulness and love for us, both in the high times and the low times.
Now, Lincolnshire chefs will battle it out for the Chef of the Year crown at this year's Taste of Excellence Awards. Now, in the 19th year, the awards aim to raise the profile of the Lincolnshire food and drink industry through awards in 11 different categories. And to tell me more about it now, I'm joined by Mark Newton. Mark, welcome. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
But first of all, where and when are the awards going to be awarded?
The awards are happening this Thursday evening at the Oaklands Hall Hotel in Laceby.
But the judging has already been done, I take it?
It has, yes. Yes, we did that last week in a darkened room somewhere in Lincoln.
Okay, so how many finalists do you have? You've got 11 categories, so you must have been eating an awful lot of food if you're doing that judging.
Thankfully, if you can put it that way, I was only involved in the Chef of the Year Awards, and for that the shortlist was 4 chefs from throughout the region who essentially came along to Lincoln, cooked up a 3-course lunch for me and my fellow judges.
So that's a total of 12 courses.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's you have to have some stamina. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, was it any good?
It was excellent. I've been privileged to be a judge for this particular category now for 2 years, and both last year and this year, the standard is absolutely exceptional. It really, really is.
Well, if the standard's exceptional between all the finalists, how do you decide which one gets the gong? What is it? What is that extra factor that you're looking for?
It's very, very difficult. I mean, we score each individual dish on a number of criteria, from the use of local produce, the provenance, the overall look of the dish, so the presentation, and obviously the taste. And then we give an overall mark for the composition of the menu. So does the dessert match the starter? Does the main course complement the starter? But yeah, it is incredibly difficult, and certainly at the end of the judging, we spent an awful long time, probably longer deliberating than actually eating, which gives you some indication of how close it was.
More cogitation than digestion there, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It makes my fish finger sandwich seem a bit boring, doesn't it? I don't want you to tell us who's won, because obviously you don't want to break the surprise or break any confidentialities, but can you give us just an idea of what it is they cooked for you?
Yes, I mean I won't name the specific dishes that won because because that would give it away. But there were some interesting trends that came out. There were a lot of sort of Scotch egg based starters, which seemingly seems to be
very much the
motorway
service station cuisine.
These were a long way away from motorway service stations. I can guarantee you. One in particular that springs to mind had rabbit compote as the meat element. But they were all excellent. They were all very top-end fine dining type food.
Now, you mentioned that one of the criteria you use is judging the use of local sources.
Yeah.
How easy is that? I suppose it's an easy area to get local food?
It is, obviously, in terms of produce, in terms of vegetables in particular. Lincolnshire, as you'll be aware, produces somewhere in the region of 40% of the nation's vegetables. So, clearly we're looking for the use of seasonal vegetables. Obviously, for other elements, it's slightly more difficult. But I think all of the contestants used various components that all came from either local fields or local farms, and it was it's fantastic to see that much Lincolnshire produce.
Mark, we'll talk more about where it comes from in a moment. Join me after the break when Dan will be bringing us a roundup of the latest sports news, and I'll be talking more to Mark about the culinary battles to come. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Still to come tonight, Dan brings us a roundup of the latest sporting action, and we'll hear a little more from Mark Newton about the culinary battle of Lincolnshire chefs. Changes to subsidised bus services by Hull City Council came into effect today. These include the termination of the Service 9 Kestrel Avenue route and the 1D 1E Sibelius Road route, which will no longer run as a cross-city service between Sibelius Road and Mizzen Road. Councillor Martin Mancy said that by reducing duplicate bus routes and some frequencies, the council has tried to ensure that savings are achieved with the least impact on passengers. North Lincolnshire Council are making plans for the all-new Christmas market and lights switch-on event in Scunthorpe. It'll be a full day this year on Saturday the 26th of November, which is not Christmas, from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m, with Dickensian-inspired activities and entertainment for all the family. There'll be a special Christmas market in Scunthorpe Town Centre with traditional Victorian rides and games, and the 2021 Visual Arts Centre will be hosting a Christmas fun day based on a Victorian theme. To mark the 80th anniversary of Immingham Secondary School, Links Inspire will be holding a reminiscence session at Immingham Library on the 8th of November. Ex-pupils and former teachers are invited along to share memories of the school. Immingham Museum will also be open during the afternoon, where an exhibition marking the anniversary is currently on display. The event will be held from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. More information by calling the library on 01469 516 050. Still with me in the studio, Mark Newton telling me about this year's Taste of Excellence Awards. Now, Mark, you're sponsoring the Chef of the Year?
That's correct, yeah.
So that's judged on that one meal that these contestants, these candidates, these nominees cooked for you, or is this a sort of a year-long achievement?
The final judging panel is the culmination of an awful lot of work throughout the year, but essentially the chefs are nominated by their own clientele. So I think this year we've had more nominations than ever before, something in the region of 12,000 nominations across a number of different categories, but the chef category is one of the most highly sought after categories.
So happy food consumers across Lincolnshire in that case.
Seems that way, yeah.
You're sponsoring this, and the sponsor is Fresh Thyme.
Yes, that's right.
We were talking about the importance of local produce a moment ago. If 40% of vegetables consumed in this country come from Lincolnshire anyway, we don't really need to encourage people to consume locally produced food in the county. But anyway, tell me about Fresh Thyme.
Well, Fresh Thyme, we're based in Boston. We employ somewhere in the region of 400 people. and we're one of the larger employers in the region, as you can imagine. And we produce a whole range of products, but as the name suggests, they're all fresh. So we produce fresh food-to-go salads that you might buy for your lunch in a variety of convenience stores, supermarkets, food-to-go outlets. We also produce, and this was our heritage, prepared vegetables. So we cut, chop, slice, dice, and now spiralise lots of different vegetables. And then we also produce a range of sandwich fillers, deli fillers that you might make your own sandwiches with.
One thinks of southern Lincolnshire, one thinks especially, I suppose we have grudgingly to accept that it is approaching Christmas, more than a month away, a 12th of the year away, but we think inevitably of the Brussels sprout.
Yes, yeah. I was thinking about that this morning. I used to think of dear old Terry Wogan, God rest his soul. He always used to say around about this time that it's time to put the sprouts on so they'd be ready in time for Christmas. And I think that's probably true.
It's very unfair. No, actually, I know sprout farmers, and they can be cooked. They can be much more interestingly and flavoursomely cooked nowadays.
In fact, they're actually better if they're slightly al dente, yeah.
And they don't have the gaseous consequences that once they did.
Well, I hope not, no. We sell an awful lot of them. So.
That's vegetables, so you're particularly interested in vegetables and I suppose arable crops as well. Other local crops, though, I mean, that could be not crops, but other foodstuffs that get in Lincolnshire. I think particularly thinking of the Lincolnshire Reds.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the best beef you can get in the country.
It is, absolutely. And certainly the menus that we judged last week, there was a whole plethora of different ingredients, from Lincolnshire goat's cheese, beetroot, venison. It was phenomenal. As you said, vegetables tend to get a lot of the headlines in terms of Lincolnshire because vegetable production is so important on the national scale, but actually some of these proteins, meats, fish, absolutely fantastic.
The importance you mentioned, well, it's the name of your company, the freshness of things. And the processing doesn't go much beyond chopping things up, I guess, in that case. You're not preserving or freezing.
We do as little as possible to the food. We like to think of ourselves really as a large kitchen. Because essentially that's what we do. We still blend sauces by hand as you would in a home environment or even a restaurant environment.
Do you think people are getting lazy in their own kitchens? Perhaps we go out to a restaurant and the sorts of people who are going to win your award make us the most fantastic meals, and then we go home and open a tin.
Yeah, I think lazy is quite an emotive word. I think we are getting used to the convenience of having excellent food available to us 24/7.
Its emotiveness makes no difference to the fact that it's true, does it? It's
quite possibly, but as I said, I think from my own point of view, why would you spend hours and hours preparing a meal from scratch when you can actually go and buy something that is absolutely superb restaurant quality from your local convenience store or your local supermarket?
The other great thing about using local produce and fresh produce is the health benefits.
Absolutely, yeah, it's well documented, and I think more and more people are starting to understand now that diets rich in green leafy vegetables or rich in olive oil, fatty acids, omega-3 from oily fish. I think that message is gradually starting to get through to people now.
So just emphasize, the fatty acids are the good ones, are they?
They are, yes, yeah.
Okay, because those two words don't usually...
They don't, no. And I think the word fat generally has had some bad press over the years, hasn't it? But actually, if you look at studies now, fatty fish, oily fish in particular, mackerel and the like, they've got proven health benefits. Now,
you've got these awards are coming up. Presumably the awards ceremony, you're going to be eating some fantastic food anyway.
Absolutely.
And you're going to be talking about fantastic food. What are we do have a tradition of culinary fine work in this country, but it's not really much compared to the French or the Italian or even the Japanese. So what would you say are the influences, the styles and traditions of cooking that are affecting your contestants?
I think one of the beautiful things about certainly the food we judged last week, but also in the UK generally, is this sort of melting pot of different ideas. So we don't have one style of cooking. I think the marketeers talked about fusion food over many, many years, but it's that we take influences from all over the world, and I think that's what makes UK cooking.
Fusion food is chips with curry sauce, isn't it, really?
Possibly back in the 1970s. I think things have moved on a bit since.
Well, and nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong at all, no, each to their own.
Absolutely fantastic. Maybe we're all a little bit more aware of the quality of what we're eating and the effort that we might put into what we're eating, because every time you switch on the television, other than for Estuary TV, you're watching endless, interminable cooking programs. Everybody's constantly cooking.
It can seem like that, can't it? Yeah.
Why is that? What's happened to our culture in the last, probably the last 10 years or so, where we are going to have an Estuary TV cookery programme on soon, I'm told. But why is it that we've suddenly become so, our bellies have become narcissistic? We think of nothing but our guts.
Well, I think it's indicative of this raising of the bar in terms of quality, and I think people are more and more interested now in seeing what can be done with food, what kind of flavours work particularly well together. and sitting at home learning, which is hopefully part of the remit for these programmes as well. But it's entertainment, but hopefully there's a bit of education going on as well.
You mentioned the raising of the bar. It should be mentioned also that Lincolnshire produces its own wine, which might surprise some people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
very good it is too.
It is. It's absolutely exquisite. Good to wash down your dinner with. Mark,
Absolutely.
thank you very much
Thank
for
you
coming.
very much.
Have a bon appetit.
Merci.
Here's Dan with the sports news.
Hull City's goalkeeping coach Gary Walsh appears set to be the latest member of the Tigers' backroom staff to depart the club. Reports in the Midlands today are linking him with a move to Aston Villa to join former City boss Steve Bruce. Stephen Clements has already made the move, having been first-team coach during his time at the KCOM Stadium. On the field, City fell to their 6th straight Premier League defeat on Saturday. A Michael Dawson own goal late on sealed the win for the Hornets, leaving Hull still in the bottom 3. Scunthorpe United couldn't have had a more opposite weekend. They thrashed Swindon Town 4-1, with all of the home side's goals coming in an action-packed first half at Glanford Park. The Iron have held on to their 3-point lead at the top of League One, thanks to 2 Panny Madden goals, as well as 1 apiece from Kevin Von Veen and Dwayne Holmes. Grimsby Town's caretaker boss Dave Moore led his side to a point on the road at Yeovil. They failed to move into the League 2 playoff spots, however, leaving them in 8th. Elsewhere, North Ferriby United lost 2-1 at home to Bromley in the National League. Rhys Thompson scored for the Villagers, who remain bottom. And finally, on to rugby, and Hull Kingston Rovers' Ken Seo has announced he's leaving the club to return to Australia. He's signed for the Newcastle Knights for next year, having spent 2 years in East Hull. In a statement on Twitter, Seo thanked the players, staff and loyal fan base. And that's all for the sport.
Thank you very much, Dan, and my thanks to Mark Newton as well. That's it for tonight. If you have a story for us, then please contact us on Facebook or Twitter. Details immediately down here. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 01472 31 553. From all of us here this evening, hope you join me again tomorrow, but for now, good evening.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Hello there and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. This evening becoming generally cloudy during the evening, with patchy rain, low cloud and hill fog becoming more prevalent during the early hours to give a damp start to Tuesday in places. Minimum temperatures of 4 degrees. Tuesday then, after a damp start in places, brighter but colder conditions should spread in from the north, with plenty of sunny spells, but also a cold northerly breeze, maximum temperatures of 10 degrees.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Good evening, you're watching Estuary News. I'm Hugh Riches. In the headlines tonight, IT experts continue to investigate a major cyber attack at a hospital trust, a new bus service to serve the residents of Grimsby, a shortage of nursery teachers across our region, and putting Hull on a board game ahead of 2017. And joining me on the sofa tonight is my guest Maggie Watts as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month kicks off. A major computer virus at the Northern Lincolnshire and Goole NHS Foundation Trust is continuing to be investigated by IT experts. It follows a cyber attack on the Trust's hospital computer systems on Sunday, which has affected the Trust's hospitals at Grimsby, Scunthorpe and Goole. All planned operations, outpatient appointments and diagnostic procedures were cancelled for yesterday and today. Nearby hospitals are dealing with some serious cases, but the virus has also affected GP services across the region and hospitals in Lincolnshire. Dr. Karen Dunderdale, the Deputy Chief Executive of the Trust, explains in a statement. On Wednesday, she says all planned operations, outpatient appointments and diagnostic procedures have been cancelled with a small number of exceptions as follows: therapy services, community services, audiology, physiological measurements, chemotherapy, antenatal, paediatrics, immunology and gynecology. She says patients with appointments in these areas should attend as normal. Patients who have appointments in all other departments, including surgery, should assume their appointments are cancelled or their procedures are cancelled unless they receive a telephone call to say otherwise. All cancelled appointments will be rescheduled as soon as possible. A woman has been assaulted after helping a man who was being targeted by a group of youths in Hull. The incident happened at around 4:10 p.m. on the 15th of October in Lonsborough Street, when the 26-year-old victim was walking towards St Stephen's with her mother and 2 children. She saw the group behaving in a threatening manner towards a man believed to be of Indian origin. She was assaulted by a young girl. Officers are now keen to speak to the man she tried to help, who accompanied the victim to the shopping centre, which he's said to visit regularly. Libraries across the East Riding will be kept open, but with reduced opening times. The decision comes as the council tries to save £1.2 million from the combined library and customer service budgets. The plans also include a reduced level of service for a mobile library service across the region. Darren Stevens, Head of Culture and Information for the Council, said the library service and multi-service centres must play their part in the Council's savings process. The Patty Butty, chip spice or a rugby ball, can you think of anything else that is synonymous or emblematic of Hull? The makers of the board game Monopoly are looking for your help to think of some ideas for the objects that are used to move round the board, as the city has been selected for a new edition. In the traditional game, an iron, a dog, a battleship or a top hat move round the board, but for the first time in the game's history, the public will have the chance to pick new counters. Ben Thompson from the company says he's already heard a wide range of suggestions. And in one of the more controversial suggestions, well, we can see him now.
Well, we've had some very good ones, some very sensible ones and some very silly ones. So things like Amy Johnson's plane, that was a good one, and the chip spice, we don't know how we do that one, but we like that one. And then some silly ones like traffic cones and the orange barriers that you can see around the city. It's going to be all about Hull, featuring everything that everybody loves about Hull. The real message is, though, for the whole public to get in touch and let us know what they want to see as the Monopoly tokens. In the traditional ones, we have things like the ship, the thimble, the wheelbarrow, all of the favourites. But this time we're looking at doing things like a trawler, a rugby ball, a football, everything that represents Hull.
And as I was saying, one of the more controversial suggestions that we've heard today is that the traditional jail square could be replaced by Lincolnshire. Get in touch with us and let us know some of your ideas. People living in Grimsby's Scartho Top have a new bus service from this week. The number 25, which serves Grimsby and Bimbrook, has been diverted from its usual route into town to take in Matthew Telford Park, where it will stop twice a day, Monday to Fridays, with additional stops on a Tuesday, Friday and Saturday. It's an interim arrangement which follows a 6-month trial of the number 11 bus, which ceased on Friday due to insufficient use. It's hoped this new bus will give people living at Scartho Top access to a regular bus service. On last night's Hot Topic, I had a chance to speak to the former Secretary of State for Education, Nicky Morgan. Here's a snippet of what she said.
We have great schools and great teachers in this country, but we don't yet have them everywhere. And so the white paper that I published back in March of 2016 was trying to set out the idea that we need to tackle those areas of entrenched educational underperformance. And I know from my time as Education Secretary that there's only so much bandwidth in a government department to deliver reform. And actually that's the big challenge in terms of bringing all schools up to the right standards, rather than having something else introduced into the system, which means that actually the education sector focuses on selective education or non-selective, rather than that laser-like focus on making sure that all children have access to an excellent academic education.
And we show you that because if you missed the episode, you can see it again on Estuary tonight at 10 o'clock and tomorrow at 11:30 in the morning. Can't be repeated too often. More than 20,000 free tickets will be available from tomorrow for the fireworks display on the opening day of Made in Hull, the major event that launches Hull 2017, which, like most years, gets underway on the 1st of January. The display will take place over the Humber at 20:17 p.m, or just after 8:15, to be accompanied by a specially commissioned soundtrack featuring musicians and bands from Hull's pop history. Tickets for the fireworks display are being released in 2 batches, with the first 15,000 released at 8 a.m. tomorrow. The second batch will be released on the 5th of November at 11 a.m. Pearson's Park's historic McFarlane drinking fountain bowl will be restored. It'll be removed from its Hull home on Thursday, so a detailed inspection can be carried out in Glasgow on the cast iron structure. This will be followed by restoration work before reinstalling the drinking fountain in the park. This will all be completed by early 2017. The fountain was installed in 1864 and functioned as a working water fountain until the 1990s, when the water supply was cut off. This month is Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Each year, on average, 15 men and 13 women are diagnosed with the disease in North Lincolnshire alone. There are usually very few early symptoms in the early stages of the pancreatic cancer, which makes it difficult to diagnose. I'm joined now by Maggie Watts, who lost her husband to the disease in 2009. Maggie, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'm very sorry, that must have been an absolutely appalling experience. Perhaps you could just tell us how you discovered what it was and how it progressed.
Yes, my husband wasn't showing that he was particularly desperately ill. He just had vague symptoms, which were, for him, upper back pain, indigestion and quite dramatic weight loss that wasn't planned. A couple of trips backwards and forward to the doctors, and they were suspecting an ulcer and were treating him accordingly. So you can imagine our absolute devastation when subsequently he was sent for a CT scan, only to discover that he had a pancreatic cancer. And not only did he have cancer, but he was facing a terminal diagnosis. So we went from thinking that there was something not quite right with him to facing his death within a relatively short period of time.
How long was it after the diagnosis?
Well, we were lucky in pancreatic cancer terms. Kevin survived for 20 months, and some people that I've met have lost their loved ones within weeks of diagnosis. So 20 months is significant in pancreatic cancer terms, and we were able to do lots of things in that time.
And this is sort of a double tragedy for your family, and especially for his family, in that he wasn't the first member of his family to suffer the same thing.
That's right. His mum had died of the same disease 40 years before he was diagnosed. So Jean, his mum, was just 27 when she died. She died in 1969, leaving behind 3 young children. And then Kevin was obviously facing the same diagnosis in 2009. And what shocked me most of all was, although their deaths were exactly 40 years apart, the medics could offer Kevin no better a chance of survival in 2009 than they could his mum in 1969. Such was the lack of progress in the disease.
Does that suggest that there's a genetic connection, that there might be a propensity to have this condition congenitally?
Yes, there is there is familial pancreatic cancer. They do know that, but they haven't discovered the faulty gene yet. So in breast cancer, you can go and get checked to see if you have the gene that's faulty. With pancreatic, they haven't discovered that. So there's an element of screening for families like mine who have lost more than one member to the disease. And it's not to say that another member will get it, but obviously they are higher risk of getting the disease.
Now the pancreas, I mean, you mentioned that one of the symptoms was confusable with the stomach ulcers.
Yes.
And the pancreas is just behind the stomach, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Is that location is deceptive in a way? You think that because that's where you're getting discomfort or pain, that you think that it might be your stomach, and in fact it's something much more serious.
Yes, I think this is part of the problem. The pancreas is buried quite deep in your body and it's behind the stomach, and so and the symptoms of pancreatic cancer can be quite vague. Indigestion type symptom is quite often one of the first symptoms that will present, and of course doctors will assume that there's something less sinister than pancreatic cancer. They won't always jump to a possible pancreatic cancer diagnosis on that symptom alone. And this is what was happening with Kevin.
And that's one of the dangers of it, is that it can be quite advanced in progress before it shows any symptoms at all.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the majority of cases. So it's got very, very low survival rates.
Maggie, we'll talk more about this after the break. Come back then. Join me then when Fred brings us a roundup of all the latest sporting action, more of the day's news headlines, and I'll be continuing to talk about pancreatic cancer with Maggie. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Still to come tonight, Fred will be bringing us a roundup of all the latest sporting action, and more from my guest today, Maggie Watts, on spotting the signs and symptoms of pancreatic cancer. A new report by the charity Save the Children says Hull and East Yorkshire are among the areas worst affected by a shortage of nursery teachers. It's being blamed on poor salaries, a lack of promotion opportunities, and a shortage of available positions. Fewer than 18% of children in Hull in independent settings are getting access to a qualified nursery teacher. In the East Riding, 48% of children are in an independent nursery without an early years teacher. Jamila Hines-Brough from the charity says fewer people are applying for the roles, and nurseries in the region are missing out. The Mariners Trust has donated £500 to Links Inspire Library Services. The money will allow the service to continue its work with a Sporting Memories group at Waltham Library. Sporting Memories is a national initiative supporting well-being through reminiscence. The group at Waltham have been meeting for over a year, and the group has recently been working on an oral history project to record memories of amateur football leagues in the area. A cheque was presented to library representatives Judith Sanderson and Claire Newton at the match between Grimsby Town Centre and Crewe on behalf of Links Inspire. East Yorkshire's Southburn Christmas Fair is now in its 23rd year and due to raise over £40,000 to help cancer patients and their families in the region. The Macmillan event is an annual occasion for people in the Driffield area, where hundreds of people come to Driffield Showground to enjoy a huge variety of stalls from around the country. It'll be held on Tuesday the 10th of November, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m, with an entrance donation of £5, the 10th of November, 45 days before Christmas. Still isn't a good cause. Still with me in the studio is Maggie Watts talking about pancreatic cancer. Maggie, your husband died. The diagnosis was too late for him because the symptoms were just those three main symptoms, which were stomach pain, weight loss and
upper back pain and indigestion type symptoms.
What should people be looking out for before that? Or is there any way of identifying, of getting warnings of the disease before those symptoms present?
Yeah, the pancreatic cancer has many symptoms, and the problem is not everybody will get all of them, and some will only get one or two symptoms and some may get more. But the main symptoms to be aware of are jaundice, and that depends on where the tumour is located. So again, it won't always present with jaundice. An uncontrollable itching that won't go away is another one that many people get. Indigestion type symptoms. New onset diabetes that's not associated with weight gain, so that's quite often a sign that your pancreas, well, obviously a sign that your pancreas is not working correctly in terms of its insulin production, etc. Upper back pain, front stomach pain radiating to the back, unexplained weight loss. So as you can see, there's quite a few symptoms, and you may only get one, or you may get a whole load of them, depending on where the tumour's located.
And if you get one or two of them, I presume that's enough to get you to the GP anyway. I hope it would be, but certainly that's where you need to be.
Yeah, I think my advice, having been through it, is if you are experiencing one or more of those symptoms and they're not responding to For example, Kevin wasn't responding to typical indigestion type medication. They're being persistent, then definitely pursue the GP, ask for further investigation. Early diagnosis is key to survival of this disease, and unfortunately too many people are left too late before the diagnosis is made.
Now, I think it's one of the highest, the most lethal, in terms of the statistics, the most lethal cancers of all of them. And those statistics in North Lincolnshire, probably about 30 people a year diagnosed with it in such a small population. Why do you think it gets so little attention?
Well, it's the UK's 5th highest cancer killer, and it's historically only received 1% of the research spend. And there's got to be a direct correlation there, I think, between the lack of money that's been given to it for research and the lack of improvement in survivability over the years. The other problem is the government they seem reluctant to launch a public awareness campaign like they have done for lung cancer, etc. And so therefore people just aren't aware of the symptoms. It's okay somebody like me being aware of them, but that's because it's affected me. I wouldn't have been able to tell you them prior to Kev's diagnosis. So I think it's twofold. There's been no money given to it and there's been no awareness, and that's one of the things that we're trying to change. Cancer Research UK have recently announced that they're going to give 18 million to research for it, which is fantastic. Hopefully that will translate in time to progress in the disease, but of course research takes time. And so for me, right now, the emphasis is on making people aware of symptoms of the disease.
And as you said, presumably that also explains why the medicine or the technique or the treatment hasn't changed in between your mother-in-law's death in 1969 and Kev's death only a few years ago.
Yes, even the chemotherapy that's in place that's given to it now has hardly changed. So there's been not even any new chemotherapy drugs coming through. We have just seen a couple come through now for patients that, that are not survivors of the disease, but in the hope that this chemotherapy will help them to last a little longer than they would under the stuff that's been there for a few years. But there's just been no change whatsoever in 40 plus years, and it's just...
Kevin obviously died very young, a very young man. Is it a disease that affects people of any age, or does it tend to strike the elderly?
It doesn't discriminate. It affects men and women equally, and it affects any age. And I think, again, there's often a thought that it's a disease that affects older people. Well, I can tell you that that's not the case. Through my campaigning since Kevin died, I've come across so many young people younger than Kevin who've been diagnosed with the disease. It affects all ages, and it's just very important that everybody familiarises themselves with the symptoms and acts if they feel that they are presenting with any.
What could one do to reduce one's chances of getting it?
Well, I don't know an awful lot about what you could do to reduce your chances. Obviously, smoking could be a contributory factor, but then smoking is associated with most cancers. So
it's not a healthy activity.
No, it's not. And there's been some research around a couple of areas. That poor dental hygiene has been one of the programmes that's been carried out recently, and bacon and sausages, that type of thing. But there's nothing that I know of that's absolutely, you can say, that causes pancreatic cancer.
Just tell me about this campaign. I see you're wearing a purple badge there. It's Cancer Awareness Week. I love the slogan. What is it? Hope is contagious.
Hope is contagious. So it's very grim around pancreatic cancer. The statistics are grim, everything's grim. And when we ran a campaign a couple of years ago to get a debate in Parliament, we used the Hope is Contagious hashtag. We want there to be hope. This badge... Whenever I've got this badge. I've launched this campaign today. It's the Hope is Contagious campaign. The badges are tear-shaped, and it represents a day when we hope for that tears don't have to accompany a pancreatic cancer diagnosis. And there's a website up and running which is all biased on symptom awareness. So it's hopeiscontagious.co.uk.
And are there any particular events, things that people could do, contribute?
We are selling the badges. We're asking people to wear them. We're hoping to get a few high-profile people wearing them just to help us get the word out there, to spread the message. It's been launched in November because it's Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, but it's a long-term project. So social media, get involved with us, help us to spread the word. That would be great.
Maggie, thank you so much for
Thank
coming,
you.
and good luck with that. Here's Fred with all the sports news.
Another member of Hull City's backroom staff has left the club today. Goalkeeper coach Gary Walsh has departed the Tigers to join former manager Steve Bruce at Aston Villa. He follows former City first-team coach Stephen Clements to Villa Park, leaving Mike Phelan as the only member of the coach staff remaining from last season. Meanwhile, goalkeeper Alan McGregor made his comeback from a serious back injury last night. He played a full 90 minutes for the under-23s against Bolton, as did defender Brian Linehan on his comeback. The search for the next Grimsby Town manager has moved on in the last 24 hours. Reports suggest that former player Marcus Bignett has been approved over the vacancy. He's currently manager of National League mid-table Solihull Moors. Meanwhile, the club has confirmed today that over 1,100 tickets have been sold for their FA Cup trip to Bolton Wanderers on Saturday. On to rugby now, and Hull FC's Scott Taylor will make his first appearance of the 4 nationals for England on Saturday. It's been confirmed by coach Wayne Bennett that the forward will be part of the squad to face Scotland. And finally on to rugby union, and Hull Iowans went down 21-40 at home to Coventry in National 1 on Saturday, while Hull RUFC won 49-10 at Stockport. Elsewhere, Scunthorpe scored just the 1 try as Paul Cook made good ground down right before finding Adam Middleton for a try in the corner. They lost 15-11 at Hesland Park against Hinckley. Meanwhile, Hollandians lost 31-14 to West Leeds. Flanker Ollie Dinnan went over for the first of their 2 tries before Don Bloomfield ran half the length of the pitch to score the second to pitch, an early try, the season contender. And that's all for the sport.
Thanks very much, Fred, and thank you to my guest Maggie Watts. That's all for tonight. If you have a news story, then please visit our Facebook or Twitter pages, email news@estuary.tv, or phone Grimsby 01472 31 55553, or write to us, Estuary TV, Nuns Corner, Laceby Road, Grimsby, North East Links, DN 34 5BQ. Until tomorrow, from all of us here, good evening.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Hello and there, and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. This evening it's going to be dry and clear, with light winds inland. This will allow temperatures to quickly fall after dark, with a widespread frost developing, minimum temperatures of 2 degrees. Wednesday, a mainly dry day with long spells of sunshine, although windy near the coast with isolated showers possible. It will remain cold with a frost forming, once again overnight. Maximum temperatures of 9 degrees.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Good evening, you're watching Estuary News. I'm Hugh Riches. In the headlines tonight, a man dies following a crash in Lincolnshire. Tickets sell out for Hull 2017's first event. Short-term disruption but long-term gain for a new power station in Cottingham, according to one councillor. And Home Sweet Home for my guest this evening, Joe Pickard, revealing all about an exclusive new series here on Estuary TV. One person has died and a man has been left with life-threatening injuries after a crash on the A180. The incident happened close to South Killinghome at around 8:20 p.m. yesterday. It involved a white Ford Focus C-Tech and a blue Peugeot 206. The 36-year-old male driver of the Ford was taken to Hull Royal Infirmary, where he remains in a stable condition. The driver of the Peugeot died at the scene. Officers are appealing for witnesses following an assault in Healing. The incident happened at 7 a.m. on Monday outside Healing Comprehensive School when a 66-year-old man was driving a Ford Galaxy along Healing Road and a grey BMW pulled up directly in front of him, causing him to stop. The man driving the Beamer got out and approached the driver's side of the Ford and punched the victim in the face through the open window. He then got back in his car and drove off. The victim sustained a black eye and a bloodied nose, but didn't require medical treatment. Anyone who witnessed the assault or who knows the identity of the BMW driver is asked to call Humberside Police on 101. Tickets sold out in less than 2 hours today for the fireworks display to start Hull 2017, which gets underway as most years do on the 1st of January. The website suffered technical issues due to the weight of traffic after visitors tried to purchase the first wave of 15,000 available tickets. The display will take place over the Humber at 20:17 p.m. or just after 8:15, to be accompanied by a specially commissioned soundtrack featuring musicians and bands from Hull's music history. And if you didn't get a chance to get hold of the tickets today, don't worry, the second batch will be released on the 5th of November at 11 a.m. A new power station for Cottingham will cause short-term disruption but will be worth it in the long term. That's according to East Riding councillor for the village, Ross Jump. She says she expects the new power station, which will be alongside the pre-existing Creek Bank substation, to be fully operational within the next 18 months. However, she has concerns about the interim.
There will be some visual impact, it'd be silly to say there isn't. I think the main inconvenience will be while the building takes place. Traffic, yes, as I've said, the damage to the verge, but also, unfortunately, we have some house building due in the immediate area, and we've again asked the planners to look at the pattern of the travel to work for the lorries, so that we don't have literally hundreds of lorries both to the building development and coming here at the same time that coincides with the schools either going to school or leaving school. Otherwise we will have logistical problems at this end of the village.
A Hull City councillor has been suspended. Councillor Stephen Bayes will now no longer be portfolio holder for the UK City of Culture 2017. Mr Bayes holds a number of roles in the city, including Visit Hull and East Yorkshire Advisory Board, Hull Business Development Fund and Bondholder Advisory Group. He was first elected in 1985 and he's a councillor for the Orchard Park and Greenwood Ward. Both Hull City Council and Hull's Labour Party have declined to comment further. Planned operations, outpatient appointments and diagnostic procedures at Northern Lincolnshire and Goole NHS Foundation Trust were cancelled today following a major cyber attack. Health bosses have indicated that normal business will be resumed from tomorrow, but patients who have planned outpatients at appointments at Scunthorpe, Grimsby or Goole hospitals are being advised to check the Trust's website. The computer virus struck the Trust's hospital system on Sunday, affecting hospitals in Grimsby, Scunthorpe and Goole. Most of the IT systems are now back up and running following Sunday's major incident. A school in Barton opened its doors to pupils for the first time today after a £12 million makeover. The new main building of Baysgarth School now accommodates maths, English, science, humanities and technology faculties and dedicated learning support and sixth form facilities. Funding came from the government's Priority School Building Programme and a combined £183,000 from North Lincolnshire Council and from the school.
I think it's a fantastic facility for the staff and the students here. I think it really is, you know, what the kids here deserve. It's a fantastic change from where we were before in the old building. It's this fit for purpose, brand new school that really is sort of deserving for the children here in Barton. I think it's just a school that's now fit for purpose. The school was a 1960s build and it wasn't fit for IT, for Wi-Fi, for things like that. And now it's much better. We can put all the technology into the school that we've always wanted to. It's a much cleaner building. The facilities, classrooms are larger. There's brand new IT equipment, you know, whiteboards, smart boards, interactive bits and pieces that the kids can use. A multi-purpose LRC that we're in now, redone sports facilities, everything really that you would dream for when building a new school.
It's great. It's very clean. It's a big difference from the old school, and it's just kind of mind-boggling really to think that we've got this from what we had before.
It's great, but honestly it's quite strange. From being in the old build and looking out the window to see this, and now in this build and looking out at the old build, it's quite different. And it's much cleaner and nicer, and yeah, it's great. The resources are a lot better. I think that's quite crucial for us, especially being at GCSE level. Everything's much newer, you can tell, it's all running a lot smoother, and for a long time we've had to make do, and now we don't because everything's new.
Just the environment for learning, really. It's rather than having to sort of make changes because it's not very clean or a very good way to go about it, it's just easier.
I think that the students here, we have increased our results significantly in these past 2 years, and we have been hindered by a building that's not necessarily been the best learning environment for the students to be in. And we're hoping that this new building won't fix all of our problems, but it will help us push that extra yard to become an outstanding secondary school with the facilities that are the best for the students and, as I say, are fit for purpose for what we need them for. I believe it just gives the students an area that's deserving of them. They are incredibly hard-working, very studious young people here. And I would say the building previously didn't sort of represent what they gave us within the classroom. Now they've got a fantastic new facility. The community here in Barton has a fantastic new school for the children for generations to come. As a school based, Garth, we are on the up. We were the second best performing school in the local area last year, and we are hoping to be the first, to be the top in the next year. And we want the area, the community, everybody in this area to be proud of Baysgarth School, and we think this building sets us on that right path for that.
I think the day's going to run smoother, and our lessons are going to be a lot easier, and we're not going to have to sit around for things to start working again.
A crisis pad is being launched for people experiencing a mental health crisis out of hours in East Yorkshire. The Humber NHS has received over £350,000 from the Department of Health for the new service, which will be supported by a round-the-clock rapid response team. The crisis pad will offer people experiencing crisis or distress access to a calm, safe environment, providing support and therapeutic interventions. It'll operate from a base yet to be identified in Hull 7 days a week from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Care Plus Group has launched a new pilot service in North East Lincolnshire for patients with heart problems. Patients will receive expert diagnostics, care and advice in the local community rather than in hospital. Led by consultant cardiologist Dr. Rob Bain, the team aims to deliver frontline cardiology outpatient services to patients with an emphasis on heart failure, arterial fibrillation and cardiac ultrasound. Patients requiring more complex investigations will be referred to the service via GPs. The team is based 4 days a week at Wheelsby View on Ladysmith Road in Grimsby and 1 day a week at the Roxton practice in Immingham. A group of volunteers from across the Humber region are making final preparations to remember the hundreds of trawlermen who conducted minesweeping operations during World War I. 670 men from Hull and Grimsby were lost. Now a series of exhibitions is to be put up across the region to remember them, including one at Holy Trinity Church. Tony Barker is one of the lead volunteers on the project.
And what's been a joy for me about doing this as a volunteer is that the story is still relevant today, almost 100 years on since some of these vessels went down, were blown up, and many casualties were lost. In particular, to meet up with a number of descendants of the Arfon. The Arfon was built at Goole but went down off Dorset, and 2 years ago it's found by accident, and now it's protected as a wreck, so it can't be touched by anybody else but people involved in diving. But we have 3 descendants who have come together as a result of, supported by the people who found the wreck, and they've come together and swapped their stories and learning more about their descendants, their loved ones, who they lost back in, 1916.
And you'll be able to hear much more about that in the accompanying documentary, which will be shown here on Estuary this Sunday at 7 p.m. Join me after the break when Fred brings us a roundup of all the latest sports news, and I'll be talking to Joe Pickard about discovering the perfect properties and the happiest homes for potential purchasers here around the Humber. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Still to come tonight, Fred brings us a roundup of all the latest sports action, and Joe Pickard joins me in the studio to discuss homes on the Humber. Hull Trains have announced a £60 million investment in a new fleet of high-tech trains with the potential for faster speeds. The trains will deliver 50% more seating, additional services and enhanced interiors. The investment comes after the train operator secured an unprecedented track access extension from the Office of Rail and Road, allowing direct services to London until 2029. Will Dunnett, Managing Director of Hull Trains, said that at the heart of these plans is a commitment to keeping local people and businesses connected to the capital. The new trains will be operational in 2019. North Lincolnshire Council is recruiting volunteers as part of a continuing management plan for Broughton's Pocket Park. The Pocket Park runs from Windsor Way to Beck Lane, and the council has carried out significant work in the park in recent years. The council wants to make it even better, and it's looking for local residents to help grow on wildflowers ready for planting at the site. The council will provide seed trays, pots and peat-free compost at no cost to volunteers. If they're grown in seed trays, they're tame flowers, aren't they? Anyone interested should call Holly Mumby Croft on 0174 297 556. An exclusive new series aiming to match property buyers with their perfect homes is coming to Estuary TV later this month. It's a 7-part series which features Cleethorpes, Grimsby and Louth and a few other places. Here's a preview.
Hello and welcome to Property Hotspots, where we show potential buyers around properties and get them to rate the local area as to how likely they'd be to move in.
We're looking for 4 to 5 bedrooms.
Very modern, contemporary.
Really nice place to live, nice and small, good community.
Whoever's designed this needs to be complimented because it is so nice.
We can't imagine seeing ourselves anywhere else.
And Joe Pickard, who you saw there, joins me now, I'm very glad to say. Welcome, Joe. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much, Hugh. It's a pleasure to be here. That's the first time I've seen that.
Is it? It's right. It's very impressive, isn't it? It looks absolutely fantastic.
It looks great.
But what's going on here? You're matching up people to find their dream houses?
Well, not entirely. So what we're doing is it's kind of twofold. First of all, we're taking buyers and we're trying to find wonderful homes for them, but also trying to highlight the local area as well. So you mentioned a few of the different places that we've been, and we're kind of really trying to highlight all of the highlights within those different towns and cities.
Well, because there are some interesting places: Cleethorpes, Grimsby, Louth, North Hykeham, Newland Avenue in Hull, Gainsborough. These are places with stories to tell.
They absolutely are, and you know, I've never been to Cleethorpes before I shot this show, and I think I had a preconception about what Cleethorpes was, really.
Oh, no, really?
And yes, I do.
It is the jewel of the Humber Riviera.
It really is. The beach is absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to go there next summer. They do paddle boarding and everything on there. It's absolutely gorgeous.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got a few interesting people, interesting houses and places are all, but you need some interesting people to put into them. How are your punters?
Well, you're going to have a special treat watching this series. We've got some amazing people that are on board, and you know what the best thing is? They're all so different. We had Stan and Sue, who were our first buyers. You'll see them next Thursday, 7:30. Bit of a plug there for the show, but
yep.
it's airing next Thursday. They're our first buyers, and they wanted to find a new home to lure in their family to come and visit them. So they wanted to be closer to the seaside because they've got a little granddaughter, and they're a really great couple. They've been together for so long, and you know when people have got such strong relationships and their banter and also their different personalities come out on the screen as well. They're just lovely.
So, yeah, families are always, the dynamic is always individual, isn't it, to say the least?
Yeah, it really is.
Getting those people in. Yeah, just to give out the dates, the 10th of November, next Thursday, that's when you're going out, 7:30, and it's it's a series of 6.
It is, but we've also got a Christmas special. So we're filming that in Lincoln. There's a Christmas market. That's on the 1st and 2nd of December. So if anybody's around and who want to come along, that would be great. We're going to be filming at the market and around the market, and also, of course, the different properties. We do 2 properties per show, and try and meet the requirements, but also kind of give a little bit of a different spin on it. Lavelles, which is the estate agent that sponsored the show, have been brilliant, kind of providing all of the different properties for us. So I've had the great pleasure of seeing properties all around the area, which has been really brilliant.
It's a super's
So
charter,
nosy.
isn't it? Is it? It's a nosy person's charter. But is that the appeal of this sort of programme? Is that you can, because we don't get to see inside other people's homes all that often.
It's just brilliant. Honestly, I love property shows in general, and to be a part of one is just amazing. And I've become obsessed now. Everywhere that you go, I'm looking at the different properties in the area and seeing the different prices.
Oh,
and
I
trying
wouldn't
to
have that wallpaper.
Yeah, I did a lot of banging on walls, going, you could move that. You could definitely move that.
So, what would be the perfect premises for you, Jo? What would be the perfect home?
The perfect home?
Yeah.
Somewhere by the water. Not too big. Quite light, bright, airy, open, with some outside space. Why, are you going to find me somewhere? Because
no, you're the one qualified to find places. You can do that favour for me, please.
Well, I've been looking. I haven't found my own place as I've been looking around the area, so that's still on the list to do. But we've got one more episode to shoot.
Oh, okay, righto. It's not just about the properties. It's not just about the punters, but you've got quite a lot of the sort of the local colour and certainly the local arts and the local culture going on.
We do, it's brilliant. You know, we were on Newland Avenue, which is in Hull, just on the outskirts of Hull, a really vibrant, kind of quite a studenty area, but really vibrant, very cafe
the Latin
culture.
culture of Hull, really.
Exactly, it's the Latin culture. But that, and then in comparison with, as we mentioned, Cleethorpes, and you see the front there, and just the beautiful, old-fashioned gorgeousness of it. I mean, it's award-winning. There's some real gems in this area, and then you go to Louth, which is just such a. I mean, I'd never been there before I went and filmed this show, and it's just so historical and just really gorgeous.
It's like walking into a Jane Austen novel in town, isn't it?
It is.
And it is beautiful. You're right. But there's lots of music. Now, this is very good, because I'm very familiar with some of the people who've been playing music, but you better tell us who...
Oh, tell me who you're familiar with.
Well, the Life and Times of the Brothers Hogg.
They're brilliant.
They're friends of mine playing that. And
right.
And they are fantastic, wonderful music. And there's an awful lot of tweed going on there.
There is a lot of tweed.
And a lot of face furniture. I wish they'd stand a little closer to the razor in the morning.
Well, that's okay, because we're not actually featuring their faces on the show.
Good. Well, no, that's a rude thing to say. But if
no, they are great. They're great.
Then that's wonderful. There's lots of wooden instruments and they're wonderful music. I love their stuff.
Yeah, well, what we've tried to do is create a show that uses everything within the local area, and that includes music as well. So we've got all local bands that have provided all of their music for the different episodes. I mean, for instance, we've got, I don't know whether you've ever heard of Gracie Falls.
Yes, of course.
Oh, she's just got the most beautiful voice, and she's just won 2016 UK's Unsigned Songwriter of the Year. So pretty massive that she's given her
I know
work.
all that, because she'll be sitting exactly where you are next Tuesday when we do the news.
Really?
So I'll be talking
to
her
warm
then.
it up for her.
Okay, let's just have a quick reminder. The series starts, you better tell me the name again.
It's called Property Hotspot.
Property Hotspot, 10th of November on this channel, 7:30. Apparently, if you want to go down market, you can watch it on Sky as well, and Property TV. I've never even heard of that one. Jo, thank you very much for coming in.
Pleasure,
Brilliant.
thank you.
Here's Fred with all the sports news.
Hull City's Robert Snodgrass has been called up to the Scotland squad to face England, despite currently being out through injury. The winger left the KCOM Stadium in a protective boot following their loss to Stoke 10 days ago, but has been called up by Gordon Scratchen. Tigers teammate David Marshall has also been called up, but Sean Maloney has missed out, along with the injured Andrew Robertson. Neil Woods will take up his new role at Grimsby Town a week earlier than originally planned. He's returned to the Marinas to oversee the restructuring of their youth academy. His official title is Head of the Grimsby Town Youth Academy and Academy Manager. Hull FC youngster Macy Matonga says he's hoping for a first-team opportunity in 2017. He's extended his stay at the Black and Whites after signing a 3-year contract extension. Meanwhile, across the city, Hull KR's Ryan Shaw says staying at the Robins for next season was an easy decision to make. He became the 18th player to commit for his future to the club for next season, despite their relegation. He says he can't wait to help the club back to where they belong. And that's all for the sport.
And that's pretty much all from us as well. Thanks, Fred. Don't think we've got time for anything else. You know the details. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. For now, good evening.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby. Hello and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. Tonight is generally rather cloudy, although there could be the odd clear spell. Most places remaining dry though, with the odd spot of drizzle across the hills. Minimum temperatures of 8 degrees. Thursday is still rather cloudy with some patchy light rain or drizzle, but some brighter periods as well, more especially in the east. Maximum temperatures of 15 degrees. With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Good evening, you're watching SG News, I'm Hugh Riches. Coming up tonight, we'll have a roundup of the latest news headlines and all the latest sporting action, if we have time, ahead of the weekend. And I'll be reviewing the week's regional papers with my guest this evening, Jane Wenham-White. But first, some news. More than 600 children in Yorkshire and Humber will wake up homeless this Christmas, according to new research from the charity Shelter. The figures reveal that the number of families living in emergency B&B and hostels has risen by 18% in a year. A family in Britain becomes homeless every 10 minutes, and Tracy Nathan from the charity says the lack of affordable housing is to blame. She says that governments have failed to build the required amount of affordable accommodation, and that's the critical issue. People fall into difficulty, and there's not enough accommodation. The first wave of extra police officers has joined Hull City Centre's community policing team. They'll be on duty to support residents, retailers, businesses and visitors in the area, which is the busiest in the Humberside Force region. The new officers are 2 sergeants and 4 constables as part of extra resources announced by the Police and Crime Commissioner Keith Hunter and Chief Constable Justine Curran last September. 10 new police community support officers will join the force on the 28th of November. The patty butty, chip spice or a rugby ball? Can you think of anything else that is emblematic of or synonymous with Hull? Well, the team behind the board game Monopoly are looking for your help to think of some ideas for the objects that are used to move round the board, as the city has been selected to be the focus of a new edition. In the traditional game, an iron, a dog or a top hat are used. I always have to be the battleship, but for the first time in the game's history, the public will have the chance to pick their own counters. Ben Thompson from the company says he's already heard a wide range of suggestions.
Well, we've had some very good ones, some very sensible ones and some very silly ones. So things like Amy Johnson's playing, that was a good one, and the chip spice, we don't know how we do that one, but we like that one. And then some silly ones like traffic cones and the orange barriers that you can see around the city. It's going to be all about Hull, featuring everything that everybody loves about Hull. The real message is, though, for the whole public to get in touch and let us know what they want to see as the Monopoly tokens. In the traditional ones, we have things like the ship, the thimble, the wheelbarrow, all of the favourites. But this time we're looking at doing things like a trawler, a rugby ball, a football, everything that represents Hull.
And one of the more controversial suggestions that we've heard is that the traditional jail square could be replaced by Lincolnshire. Why not get in touch and let us know some of your ideas? Baysgarth School in Barton has been given a new lease of life thanks to a £12 million makeover which has been sourced from the government's Priority School Building Programme, North Lincolnshire Council and the school itself. The refurbishment is all in aid of giving its students a modern learning environment. This week has seen the students returning to their newly refurbished school after a busy half-term for the teachers and the builders alike.
I think it's just a school that's now fit for purpose. The school was a 1960s build, and it wasn't fit for IT, for Wi-Fi, for things like that. And now it's much better. We can put all the technology into the school that we've always wanted to. It's a much cleaner building. The facilities, classrooms are larger. There's brand new IT equipment, whiteboards, smart boards, interactive bits and pieces that the kids can use. A multi-purpose LRC that we're in now, redone sports facilities. Everything really that you would dream for when building a new school.
Bus and rail travellers in North East Lincolnshire will be able to pick up free public transport advice next week at a travel surgery. People will be able to ask questions, make comments or pick up a copy of the Grimsby Bus Guide. The free bus and rail surgery will be held on board Bus It, a mobile information bus between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. at Riverhead next Tuesday. Travel surgeries enable passengers, operators and the council to come together to improve public transport across the county. Time now to have a look through this week's regional papers with my guest Jane Wenham-White, Head of Income and Regeneration at St Andrew's Hospice in Grimsby. Jane, welcome as always. Very good to see you.
And you too, Hugh.
Thank you for coming back.
Pleasure.
You've got one story, I know, which might touch on something we were talking about a moment ago, about the lack of accommodation and that families losing homes.
Absolutely, yes. It's an article that was in the Market Raisin Mail. There were plans to build over 300 homes. And I have to say that we at the hospice were quite pleased to hear that, because we're just about to open a charity shop actually in the centre of Market Raisin. But the issues are, once again, whilst it would be nice to have the 300 homes, there is concern from the local residents about the increase in traffic and the pressures on local services such as doctors, dentists and the local shops, etc. So it's finding that balance, isn't it, between actually having the infrastructure in place and keeping things local without actually losing sort of specialisms, I suppose.
Well, there is the contradiction between the fact that there are more people than there are houses, clearly, as we've learnt in the news this evening.
Yeah.
And people think, well, so there should be more houses to house more people, and yet nobody wants the houses around them.
That's right, yes. And there's also apparently problems in Market Raisin due to the potential sort of flood risk as well there, where they're actually planning to actually build the houses. So.
Well, that's always
difficult.
A perennial Lincolnshire problem,
Yes,
particularly,
yeah.
of course, isn't it? Why build houses in floodplains? Perhaps we should take the Malaysian model and build kampongs, houses on stilts. And
There's an idea.
It works very well. If those are the conditions, those are the conditions. But anyway, that's a sort of perennial conundrum, isn't it?
It is.
There are
it's also
houses.
there's an article in the Bridlington paper about the closure of minor injuries unit as well, and it's the same sort of argument that is ongoing, really, having sort of the big specialist hospitals and getting rid of the cottage hospitals, partly because of the expense of keeping them going and actually recruiting staff, particularly in this neck of the woods, which is very difficult.
Well, as being involved in the sort of the final stages of the medical process, as it were, how good are the cottage hospitals? What are the advantages of having those local?
Well, I have to say, from personal experience, I'm not sure sort of from in Lincolnshire, but from personal experience, Cottage Hospital down south in Gloucestershire, a relative of ours was recently cared for there, and the care was absolutely fantastic. In fact, the care they described over the telephone to me was like hospice care, and they were absolutely delighted with it in comparison to the large Gloucester Hospital that they've previously experienced. So I think there's a lot to be said for this. Again, it's staff having the time, it's that local knowledge, it's all that stuff that you do lose when you go to a big hospital.
Talking of local knowledge, we did just report a story about a Monopoly game to be based on the city of Hull. There was a Monopoly game based on Grimsby last year.
There was yesterday, and we were last year, and we were actually on one of the. I think we were on the community chest, and but I understand they actually had a Monopoly game based on Lincoln, and the Go to Jail was actually replaced with Go to Grimsby. I don't know if that's
really?
a scurrilous rumour or whether that's true.
My attitude to Lincoln has just changed radically in that case. So what were the counters in the Grimsby game?
They were the normal counters.
They were the normal ones,
yes,
were
the
they?
boot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm always the battleship. What are you?
I tend to be the dog. A Scotty dog, yes.
Okay, all right.
Or the hat.
Well, say no more about that. You found a few more stories here as well.
Yeah, lots of good news stories. I mean, one particularly close to my heart is the Hull City of Culture, which takes place next year. And they're sort of starting off the celebrations with a big firework display at 2017.
Yes, a little bit after 8:15.
Quarter past 8.
On the
actually,
1st
on
of
the 1st of January. And the article actually in the Hull Daily Mail is about the fact they actually put 15,000 tickets on sale recently, and they all went within 2 hours. And they're actually going to be putting another 10,000 tickets on sale on Saturday, I believe, as well.
It crashed the system, the first
yes,
one. And it's not quite on sale because the tickets are free,
they
which is one of the reasons why
on
demand
sale,
is so high.
inverted commas.
But available anyway. And yes, and it's clearly going to be, I was going to say sold out as well, the wrong phrase, but it's going to be an absolutely packed occasion.
Yeah. I just hope, there's been a lot of media interest recently on the Olympic Stadium in London and how money is being wasted because the actual stadium can't be used for the purposes it wants to be used for. And I just hope that Hull gets it right, and the actual money that's being invested into the city will actually be a lasting legacy for all the local people into the future, sort of after 2017, because otherwise it's very sad.
The Olympics have given London an enormous, great big helter-skelter, and I'm sure the people are very grateful for that down there.
Well.
But it doesn't have a fireworks display. You don't need an excuse, do you?
No, you
absolutely
don't.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely wonderful, yeah.
And I think it's going to be, it's all been, the phraseology is very careful, it's going to be over the Humber. Now, presumably they're not sort of launching fireworks from helicopters or anything like that. They have to be exploiting the bridge. That's going to be the platform.
Yes, I would have thought so, yes. But it should be, it'll just be fantastic. I just think it's a real opportunity for the area, I think.
Oh, it's going to be fascinating. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be there all the time. Moving on, what have we got next?
Well, this is, again, a little bit close to my heart. This is a story about Alford. And Alford has got a history of sort of having a craft sort of market at bank holidays and what have you. And they recently, in March this year, were successful in getting a lottery grant for £50,000. And they actually operate out of, I've been to the actual studio, they actually operate on the corner of the marketplace in Alford.
Just remind us where Alford is.
Alford, it's in the Lincolnshire Wolds, not far from Louth.
Northern Lincolnshire, yep.
Yeah. And southern, it's going towards Skegness, if you like, from Louth. And they're turning what I think it was an old bakehouse into a pottery studio. And I actually visited a few weeks ago, and it's a fantastic facility. And so there's a little article here about celebrating, really cutting of the ribbon. They've actually opened it, and they started the whole thing off with some children actually modelling some clay. I just think it's wonderful to have that sort of facility available.
Well, these crafts are just so enjoyable, isn't it? I suppose it's doing somebody out of a job if, somebody at Wedgwood is cursing us for making our own teacups. But,
it's not quite the same, though, is it?
But there's sort of the crafts are very important, aren't they, to keep them alive?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
And very enjoyable, relaxing and therapeutic, presumably, as well.
Yeah.
Jane, we're going to have to stop there for a minute. We'll come back after the break. Join me then when we'll talk about a few more of the newspapers, stories, and if we have time, Dan will bring us some of the latest sports news. Welcome back. You're watching Estuary News. Still to come tonight, I hope, all the latest sporting action ahead of the weekend. And still with me in the studio is Jane Wenham-White from St Andrew's Hospice, having a look through the region's papers of the week. Jane, you found a dancing story.
Absolutely, yes. the Cliftons, who have actually taken over Strictly Come Dancing, and it's absolutely fantastic because Joanne Clifton is actually an ambassador for the hospice, and so we sort of retweet and do all those kind of things that people do these days. And it's just, I just think it's fantastic that actually you've got Karen, Kevin and Joanne all doing so well. And sadly, Karen had to leave because her partner left, but just doing so well in the competition. I just think it's a celebration of an achievement in this local area, really.
Well, I noticed that Kevin in the national press is Kevin from Grimsby, it always has been, but in the local press is Kevin from Waltham.
Oh, really?
A little bit more precise, a little bit more specific about his origins.
Yeah.
Is this, just because there's one family and its connections, does this demonstrate, can we extrapolate from that Grimsby is a town of hoofers?
I don't know. I just think it's for however silly it may be, ballroom dancing isn't serious, but I just think it has put Grimsby on the map a little bit.
Have you ever tried ballroom dancing?
I have.
It is very serious.
It's very serious. I remember when I was 12 years old, I was so bad at it, I had to actually, my instructor made me walk on top of his feet to get through my bronze and silver ballroom dancing examinations.
Oh, really? I've walked on top of women's feet. And not at all because they wanted me to do it all. I was once complimented.
Sorry.
No, I was once complimented on my flight, but I think that was just because she wanted me to leave the country.
Yeah. I just think it's wonderful, actually, that people do. It's a bit like the cookery programmes. People in general don't do dancing because people are too embarrassed, but actually there's a complete mania and that's fascination with watching people do it really, really well.
And there's quite a fascination watching people doing it really, really badly as well.
I suppose so, Ed Balls and all that. But
He's in a long tradition of former politicians
yeah.
and doing that sort of thing. Anyway, that's enough of advertising things on other television stations. What else have you got here?
I'm afraid this isn't another television station. It's actually a lady from Orkborough who has made a sort of bit of a career of actually going on quiz programs. She is on Mastermind on Friday night tonight, in fact, and. She's actually she's won loads and loads of money, and I just think it's really nice somebody that clever.
Really?
I mean, awe of her.
How does she win money just by knowing things? General
she
knowledge.
Just enters lots of competitions. She enters competitions. I imagine, all sorts of competitions. But she actually, as soon as she sees a television program, she thinks she might win. Or she might be able to get on, she actually applies. And obviously you see them at the end of each programme, try to find people who've actually got the courage to actually be questioned by
Humphreys.
Slightly
desperate in Humphreys' voice, just slightly desperate, please come and play.
Yes.
Do we know what this lady's specialist subject is?
I don't think it actually says in this.
It's always, I do like watching that programme, but I can just about...
She did, I think her chosen subjects are 1940s Hollywood actress Rita Hayworth.
Right. Okay.
So
Very specific.
Yes, absolutely.
I can get through the general knowledge round. I get maybe 2 or 3 right in the general knowledge rounds, but I can never. The specialist subjects. You think the strange things that people have clearly dedicated their interest to.
Yeah.
The life of the number 147 steam train coming out of Bolton or whatever.
Rochester.
It is.
So I think that's a nice story, really.
Good for her. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wagyu.
Now, I'm a bit of a foodie myself, and so I was delighted to see that actually in my local town, Jackson's Butchers are actually going to be, or are already actually selling Wagyu steak. I've never tried it myself. Have you, Hugh?
Just tell me what Wagyu is.
It's just a type of beef, and it's very, very expensive. And it says here, it's recommended you cook it on a very high heat, and it's best served medium rare. The meat is from the Wagyu breeds in the UK, which are very well looked after. And it's a very marbled beef. Obviously, you don't want to overcook it.
Sure.
But I remember looking at it. I was in Cambridge once, and actually I needed to get a second mortgage to buy 2 small steaks, so I didn't bother. But it was something like £120 for 2 steaks. But hopefully, Jackson's will be a little bit more realistic.
In that case, I have certainly not tasted Wagyu ever. But
so it'll be interesting to see how much it is.
Well, I look forward to getting an expense account. That sounds absolutely fascinating. Or making friends with a farmer, perhaps. That's the only way to do it. How would you spend that much money on a meal?
You'd have to just eat it very slowly with chopsticks.
It says really medium rare. It doesn't mean medium rare, of course. It means rare. But in this country, we overcook meat, especially. We're frightened of having rare. I mean, I like my beef in a state where there's a possibility of the beast getting better.
I don't know about that, but
there will be blood. But I don't know. I would never spend that much money. Well, no doubt it's much cheaper than that, and no doubt it'll be absolutely delicious.
I should try it and let you know.
Yeah. Can I introduce a couple? I found one here, which is a local Grimsby story. it's not all that. It's a death, but it's not all that sad because it's a death at the age of 92,
Gosh, yeah.
which is, in our English cliche, a good innings.
Yeah.
But it's a remarkable one. It's George Paliowski, who was one of the Poles who arrived in Grimsby after the end of the Second World War, having fought with the Carpathian Lancers. He had been captured by the Germans, escaped from them when they occupied Poland, and fought with his regiment. Lancers and the Polish Lancer, the first engagement of the Second World War was German tanks rolling against Poles on horseback with a spear.
Yeah, it's just frightening, isn't it? How do they do that?
Well, and then the last engagement was the explosion of an atomic bomb. There was a certain amount of change in technology during those 6 years. But George then stayed on in Grimsby, along with a lot of his regiments, including the colonel, and he only died recently. He was an architect, much loved here, but he was also famous for throwing parties.
Oh.
But then that makes him utterly indistinguishable from every other Pole I've ever come across. But how wonderful that a Polish cavalryman made his life in Grimsby, and a very long and extremely enjoyable one.
And
it
let's
seems to have
hope there's a
been.
big party to celebrate his life.
Absolutely, yes. And there might be one or two glasses of vodka involved.
Yes,
I
I'm sure.
suspect.
Yeah.
And there's another one here. This is a strange one again from the Grimsby Telegraph. You and I both know Grimsby very well and work in Grimsby. We know the pier in Cleethorpes. It's recently been refurbished at great expense and turned into an absolutely beautiful venue. Wonderful, especially the restoration of the Art Deco and stained glass windows and things like that. Now there's talk of selling it to Papa's fish and chip chain. So that
I just don't understand the business. I mean, I'm not a business person myself. I just don't understand why. Because it has had some very, very good reviews. I mean, I've been there myself. It has had some very, very good reviews. And it's an iconic location.
I've not had a word spoken against its new format and its new ownership and its new business, but maybe there just isn't. Maybe it's a little pricey for Cleethorpes. Maybe it's not.
I don't know. I mean, I know they got a license to have weddings there, and people spend enormous amounts of money on weddings. It's it's a big industry. I don't really understand why it's being sold.
Well, perhaps there's a business plan against this. If there is one thing that Cleethorpes needs, it's another fish and chip shop.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely necessary. You found one more here. This is blooming great team effort to improve gardens.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
Rotary groups actually planting crocuses throughout the town. We've actually had this actual story is about them planting them down the river, helped by National Citizenship Scheme students who've also helped the hospice as well to great effect. And they've been planting them in our gardens too.
Good for them. Since it's Pedantic Friday, I'll just mention the fact that the plural is croci. Jane, thank you very much indeed. Here's Dan with a roundup of all the latest sports. Thanks very much, Dan. That's it for tonight. If you do have a news story for us, then please visit our Facebook or Twitter pages. Details almost drowning me. Email news@estuary.tv or phone Grimsby 01472 31 553, or do it the old-fashioned way and write to us at Estuary TV, Nuns Corner, Grimsby, North East Lincolnshire, DN345BQ. Have an excellent weekend. Until Monday, good evening.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the University Centre Grimsby.
Hello there and welcome to Estuary TV's weather. This evening becoming generally cloudy during the evening, with patchy rain, low cloud and hill fog becoming more prevalent during the early hours to give a damp start to Tuesday in places. Minimum temperatures of 4 degrees. Tuesday then, after a damp start in places, brighter but colder conditions should spread in from the north, with plenty of sunny spells, but also a cold northerly breeze, maximum temperatures of 10 degrees.
With university courses on your doorstep, there's lots of reasons to study at the University Centre Grimsby. Sponsored by the